so much. Shalom, y'all. It's so great to be in Dallas. Big team. Thanks to everyone at the JCC. Thanks to my dear friends, Janet and Jeff Vick, Nathan and Levine. I love you guys. You're the best. And thanks especially to the Dallas Historical Society. Because I think we need to turn the volume down just a bit. There we go. Stories define who we are. And our histories are shared through the stories we tell. And tonight, I'm honored to bring to you some of my stories. And I hope they resonate with your stories. And if they do, please let me know about it. Because that's the way we build memories that strengthen our Jewish community. I am the best boy in the United States of America. Now, if you look on your centerpieces, the beautiful centerpieces, you will see me at 8 years old, Purim, Omaha, Nebraska. That's right, Omaha. This is what my Zadie, my grandfather, called me. My Zadie, Louis Paperny, came from Minsk, Gubernia, the county of Minsk, in Russia, in the early 1900s. He came through Ellis Island, but he thought there were too many people there. So he made his way to Omaha, Nebraska. Why Omaha, Nebraska? Because like Dallas, Omaha was built because of the railroad. The Union Pacific Railroad, the Golden Spike Railroad, began in Omaha, Nebraska, went all the way to San Francisco. And it attracted Jews who came from places like the Lower East Side, who came to Omaha seeking their fortune, a better life for themselves. And my Zadie became a peddler, like many of those immigrants, of fruits and vegetables. Zadie Louis stood about 4'9", but he was very stocky and very strong because he used to lug all those bags of 50-pound bags of carrots and potatoes. And he had this ruddy complexion, and he loved the United States of America. I never once heard my Zadie say the United States of America, just the United States. He always said the United States of America, because it gave him everything. His family, he married my grandmother in Omaha. They had 4 girls, 4 daughters. The baby was my mother. It gave him his family, it gave him his business, and it gave him his community. When we used to come over to Bubby and Zadie's house, Bubby is grandmother in Yiddish, Zadie is grandfather in Yiddish, we would enter through the back door. We'd grab some of Bubby's cookies. Those were mumble bread studded with almonds, dipped in cinnamon sugar. They were in an old white roaster in the kitchen. And we'd munch on the cookie and we'd come around the corner and there would be Zadie, sitting in his big red velvet chair, in front of his big screen TV. Because as soon as Zadie had some money, he bought the biggest television set he could find. I'd come around the corner, oh, by the way, next to the big red velvet chair was a side table. On the side table were 3 things. A pack of unfiltered Camels. He smoked 4 packs a day. A silver-plated Ronson lighter. Remember these? A silver-plated Ronson. This is actually my Zadie's actual lighter. I wanted it after he died, may he rest in peace, because his hands were on this every day of his adult life. The third thing on the side table, a glass of water with his teeth in it. Sadie would sit in that big red velvet chair, and when I, about 6 or 7 years old, would come around the corner, his face would light up. And he'd open up these enormous legs of his, and I would rush and jump into his lap. And he would put a World Wrestling Federation leg lock around me like this. And I would be right here. And I knew what was coming. He'd give me a big, wet, sloppy, scratchy kiss right on the lips. And then he'd look me straight in the eye. And he would say to me in his Russian accent, "Rami, you're the best boy in the United States of America." I'd say, "Zadie, I know, let me go, let me go." No. He wouldn't until he looked me in the eye again and he'd say, "Rami, you're the best boy in the United States of America." I said, "Zadie, please let me go." No, third time. "Rami, you're the best boy in the United States of America." And then he'd open his legs and I would run off. Then my brother Bobby would come around the corner. And he would jump into Zadie's lap. And Zadie put the leg lock around him, give him a big, wet, scratchy kiss right on the lips. He'd look him in the eye and he'd say, "Bobby, you're the best boy in the United States of America." And then my brother Dougie, "You're the best boy in the United States of America." And then my cousin Lori, "You're the best girl in the United States of America." And you know what? We believed him. I believed him. And in many ways, I've tried to live the rest of my life being that best boy. Except in Hebrew school. Any of you go to Hebrew school Monday, Wednesday, 4 to 6? Can I see hands? Tuesday, Thursday, 4 to 6. Anybody Sunday morning, 9 to 12, even if you weren't born Jewish? Did you have Mr. Friedman? I had a teacher, Mr. Friedman, for 3 years in a row. Bet, Gimel, and Dalet. 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. It was hard to find good Hebrew school teachers in Omaha, Nebraska, not like Dallas. And I'll tell you something, Mr. Friedman did not know anything about teaching. And he knew some Hebrew words. He was a sweet soul, nice man. He came every afternoon at 4 o'clock to teach us kids a little Yiddishkeit. Mr. Friedman had no classroom management skills either. I was coming from a full day at public school, 8:30 to 3:30. The last place in the world I wanted to be at 4 o'clock in the afternoon was another classroom. Now, I was a good kid at Dundee Elementary School, but boy, in Bethel Synagogues Hebrew School, let's just put it this way. Mr. Friedman had a nickname for me. He called me Wilde Chai. Anybody know Yiddish in the room? Wild animal. Because I would do everything I could to get Mr. Friedman off the topic. I'd have pencils in the acoustical ceiling. I'd send notes to my friends. I was looking at comic books under those flip desks. I was talking, always talking. When Friedman got upset at me, he yelled one of two things. This was the first. Shekin. 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 Who knows what that Hebrew word means? What does it mean? It doesn't mean quiet. It means shut up. That's all I heard all afternoon. Shekin. 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 This is a true story. All my stories are true. When I went for my first bar mitzvah lesson, to Rabbi Alexander Katz in Omaha, Nebraska, another sweet man from the old country. First lesson for my bar mitzvah. Like the old timers, he pinched my cheek. And he looked at me and he said, "Sonny, what's your name in Hebrew?" I said, "Sheket." For the longest time, I thought my Hebrew name was Sheket Ben Avraham. If Friedman got really upset, he would yell a curse in Yiddish at the top of his lungs, but he knew I didn't know Yiddish, Jeff, so he would translate it into a mangled English, so I knew what he was cursing me. So he'd get beat red in the face, and he would say, "You, Wolfson, go to the back of the room and spit in your own face." Do you have any idea what that means? I'm 9 years old, I would try it. I'd go, it's Schwein Punam in Yiddish. Spit in your own face. It's a curse. You know, I tell these stories, and people come up to me and tell me stories about their old country Hebrew school teachers. So a guy in Miami, Janet, a few years ago, comes up to me and he says, "Oh," he said, "I had a teacher like that." I said, "Yeah?" He said, "Yeah, this teacher had trouble pronouncing his E's." I said, "Like what?" He would say, "But the teacher would say, Tu B'Shvat is the holiday for the trees," instead of trees. Tu B'Shvat is the holiday for the trees. So I said, "Okay, that's a little funny." But he said, "No, it got really funny when it came time to take a test." Because the teacher would get up in front of the class and he would say, "Okay, boys," didn't matter half the class was girls. "Okay, boys, take piece of paper." Now, Nate, you hear that, that's the funniest thing you ever heard if you're 9 years old. Take a piece of paper. So every time the teacher would say, "Take a piece of paper," the kids were on the floor laughing. So the teacher finally got so upset. He said to the kids, "What's so funny?" And the kids explained what was funny. So the teacher said, "Okay, take sheet of paper." That's pretty funny. But you gotta love these teachers. I'm telling you, they were amazing. And they are amazing today. Anyway, here's the best part of it all. I was such a Vilna-Chaya at Bethel Synagogue in Omaha that it took the congregation I grew up in, Bethel Synagogue, 20 years to invite me back to the synagogue to give a lecture in Jewish education. They couldn't believe I became a professor of Jewish education. So Ann, you're going to love this. My mother, who was a force of nature, made sure that the synagogue was packed. It was like Kol Nidre. There were like 800 people there for my lecture. I give the lecture, it goes great, and at the end I ask for questions. In the front row, a hand shoots up, and I look out, it's Mr. Friedman. So I called on him. I said, "Mr. Friedman, it's so good to see you. What's your question?" He stands up in the front row of the synagogue. He doesn't address me. He turns around. He faces the congregation. And he says the following. True story. All my stories are true. "Ronnie Wolfson was the best student I ever had." You gotta love it. The earliest memory of my Bubby, my grandmother, was Bubby lighting her Shabbat candles on Friday night. Bubby Ida stood about the same height as Sadie Louie. And when it came time to light candles, called benching licht in Yiddish, she would go all by herself from the kitchen, which was her domain, into the dining room. In the dining room, she had a big piece of furniture called a break front. Remember those? She kept her china and her crystal there. And on the counter, there was a candelabrum for Shabbat candles, her Shabbos candles. There was a place for 6 candles. And I already taught you why she lit 6 candles on Shabbat. Why? Ah, good. 2 minimum for Shabbat, and she lit 1 candle for each of her daughters, each of her children. which is a wonderful tradition, and you can start it this week. So she put the candles up, then out of a drawer she took a little black scarf called a tickle in English, and she put it on her head. She was all by herself. She lit the candles. Then she did what to me was, as a little boy, was the most mysterious thing I'd ever seen in my life. She went like this over the flames. Anybody see this? Some of you probably do it. Do you do this? It's freestyle. Anybody go like this? At the end of the third time around, she blocked her side of the candles like this. And she started a little aerobics. It's called shuckling in Yiddish. And she said the blessing under her breath, Adlik ner shel Shabbos. And she kept going. I had no idea what she was doing. She wasn't talking, but she was deep into something. When she was good and ready, she would open her eyes, she'd gaze at the candles, and every Friday night I saw this, there were tears streaming down her cheeks every Friday night. Later I learned why. Because that was her moment to talk with God. But we didn't go to the synagogue very often. Maybe the high holidays. But she would never miss her weekly appointment to talk with God. Ask for blessings for her family, her friends, her community. And then, when she finished this little private ritual, she would run from the dining room into the living room to grab the first grandchild she could get her hands on. Often it was me. And she would plant a big, wet, scratchy kiss. It was scratchy because she had a mole above her lip right here. And she would say after the kiss, "Good Shabbos, Tatale." Sweetie, good Shabbos, Tatale. Good Shabbos. And that's when I learned the most important lesson I've ever learned or taught about Jewish life. It's not just about the blessings. It's about the blessings and the kisses. The blessings without the kisses are empty. They're empty. So don't forget to kiss your loved ones when you do a Jewish blessing. Oh, my mom. The baby of the 4 girls. She was meant to be a boy, so Sadie treated her like a boy. And the minute she graduated University of Nebraska, she was in the same class with Johnny Carson. Some of you remember him. She went into business. 1950, she went into business. She was in an advertising agency. She made her own advertising agency. And when we boys, I have 2 younger brothers, when we were growing up, she decided she wanted to build a donut shop in Omaha, Nebraska. So she went to the Mr. Donut people on the East Coast. They wouldn't sell it to her. How come? She was a woman. So she said, forget you, I'm going to build my own. And she did. It was called Dippy Donuts. Red flock wallpaper, Tiffany lamps. There was a big a window you could see into the bakery and the guy frying the donuts. And it was a cake donut around the window, and on it she wrote the following saying: "As you ramble on through life, brother, whatever be your goal, keep your eye upon the donut and not upon the hole." She had 12 donut shops in Omaha, Nebraska. And then a deli, and then a family bar. She was something tremendous. Volunteered at Bethel Synagogue, built a Braille group at the synagogue that created the first Hebrew-English Haggadah ever for the Jewish blind. That became the Nebraska Foundation for Visually Impaired Children that she chaired from the day she created it to the day she died. My mom was something. She married a guy from Brooklyn, my father Alan. He was something too, an inventor. He invented a toothbrush that brushed both sides of your teeth at the same time. Don't get it. The story's in the book. Wow. My mom, though, boy, she did something to me that changed the course of my life big time. After my bar mitzvah, like many of the kids, I quit. I wanted nothing to do with Hebrew school, nothing to do with the synagogue. And my mother was frantic. She had moved the family 4 blocks away from Bethel Synagogue, and she wanted us kids to be around the synagogue. And I wanted nothing to do with it, and I was a terrible adolescent. And one day, my mom came in after 2 years of pleading with me to go back to the synagogue. She holds a flyer, a little, remember flyers when we had some real mail? From United Synagogue Youth, the youth group at the synagogue. New member barbecue, free food. And my mother walks into my room. I was a chunky kid. My mom bought clothes for me in the Husky department. I probably weighed 200 pounds as a kid. My mother walks in one Sunday afternoon and she's got the flyer in her hand. She says, Ronnie, look, there's a new member barbecue for the USY group at the synagogue. Why don't you go up there and have some dinner? She hands me the flyer, and it's a true story. All my stories are true. Terrible story. I crumpled up the flyer, and I threw it back at her. I said, Mom, I want nothing to do with it. And my mother had it. And she said to me, son, your father and I are going out to dinner tonight. You were on your own. She storms out of the room, and I say, okay. About 2 hours later, I get the growlies. I'm hungry. My parents have left the house. I walk into the kitchen to get something to eat. I open the refrigerator. You know what was in it? Nothing. A bottle of Heinz ketchup. I don't know what my mom did with the food. It was gone. There was nothing to eat. I slammed the door of the refrigerator shut. And what do you think I saw on the front of the refrigerator? Pasted, smoothed out, and pasted on the front of the refrigerator. The flyer from USY. And oh, my mother. I call this chapter in the book, Never Underestimate Your Mother. I had no choice. So I walked up the 4 blocks to the synagogue. I walk into the youth lounge in Bethel. All my buddies from Hebrew school are there. Hey, Ronnie, how are you? Warm welcome. Hey, Ronnie, where you been? Hey, Ronnie, did you ever get the spit out of your face? And then a new youth director who had just come to Omaha from St. Louis got up in front of us kids. I'm 14 years old. And he starts telling us about all the fantastic things we're going to do in USY. We're going to have programs. We're going to do social justice work. We're going to sing. You're going to come to my house to study Torah on Shabbat, and then we'll play football or basketball. We're going to go all night long on a bus trip to St. Louis. I look around, I see the girls, and they look pretty good to me. I said, oh, sign me up for that. This guy was Mr. Ruach. His name, Jack Mola. My dear friend and teacher, the reason I'm standing here right now is that man, Jack Mola. Stand up, Jack. Let's give him a hand. He turned me on to Jewish life. And he said at the end of the evening, he said, you know what, kids? Next week we're going to Marsha Elkon's house. And we're going to have a Bible quiz bowl. Saturday night. I said, wow, that sounds like fun. And sure enough, the next Saturday night, I go up to Marsha Elkon's house. I walk down the basement steps where the party's going to happen. And as I get to the last step, true story, all my stories are true. I look across a crowded room of kids, and I see the cutest girl I've ever seen in my life. I made a beeline to her so fast, you couldn't believe it. And I walked up to her and I said, hi, I'm Ron. I noticed that right here on her breast pocket, She had the initials SK. I said, what does SK stand for? And she said, Susie Krukowska. I said, that's a funny name. She said, it's Polish for cuckoo bird. I said, wow, cute girl, cute name. We've been married 45 years. There she is. Susie Krukowska. Now give her a nice one. Susie's parents were Holocaust survivors, may they rest in peace. Susie was born in Berlin, Germany in 1950, and they immigrated to the United States through New Orleans. And HIAS, all you friends in the Historical Society are going to love this story. HIAS, which was the agency that placed immigrant Jews into communities, said to the Krukowskis, it was Susie's parents, Hilda and Abe, her Uncle George, and this little baby, a year old, Surah. They said to them in New Orleans, we have you scheduled to move to Fort Worth, Texas. There is a photo in the book of Uncle George's valise from Germany that says G. Krukowska, Jewish Federation, Fort Worth, Texas, written on the outside of the valise, the suitcase. But the quota was filled, and they said, we have a spot in Omaha, Nebraska. The weather's just like Poland, you'll love it. They didn't have any money, they didn't have a sponsor, and they had no choice. So they moved to Omaha. And my Susie is so sweet. She will say to you, the only reason we moved to Omaha is so she could meet me and I could meet her. Is that a share or what? I was 15, she was 14. We had the best wedding ever in Omaha, Nebraska, and we couldn't wait to get out of there. Do you remember the days when the couple left early from the reception because they couldn't wait to get to the hotel? Today, the kids have been living together for 7 years, and they sweep up the place. We couldn't wait, and we were dressed in pastels. It was a June 21st wedding. Pastels. I had like a white blazer and purple pants. And we had matching paisley luggage to go with the pastel outfits. This is 1970. And we got in the car, everybody saw us off, and we drove to the Holiday Inn, where we had booked the honeymoon suite, but there was an astronaut visiting town. So we got bumped down to the Casbah suite. Don't ask. I carry Susie over the threshold on our wedding night. I set her down on the bed, and I go to get the suitcase that's packed full, because the next morning, everybody's meeting us to see us off to our honeymoon to Disneyland. I pick up the suitcase, and the handle breaks off. It's now about 10:30. And I say to Susie, what are we going to do? I can't lift this suitcase. Everybody's going to be at the airport waiting for us. And now, after debating for half an hour, it's 11 o'clock, Sunday night, after our wedding. And I figure the only thing I can do is call my father. Here's how the phone conversation went. Hello? Dad? Ronnie? Dad, I need a screwdriver. True story. He brought a tool case. The next morning, we had a fabulous honeymoon. We were going to school in St. Louis. I got involved in Jewish education at the same synagogue that Jack Milan was the educator at, B'nai Emunah. And things were going great. We loved being Jewish teachers, and we were really excited to get pregnant. I say we because I was as involved in this pregnancy. We took the Mazel Tov class. We were all ready to welcome this new baby into our little family. And nobody ever said a word that something could go wrong. Terrible. So our baby was born on the afternoon of May 6th, 1974, and died 13 hours later. She had become stressed during labor. And there's a condition called meconium aspiration, where the baby ingests contaminated fluid and she didn't have a chance. This was, as you can imagine, devastating to a young couple. It was devastating to our parents who were there in St. Louis awaiting the birth, expecting to be grandparents for the first time. And nobody in 1974 knew how to handle this, nobody. The nurses moved Susie from the maternity floor to the urology floor so she wouldn't have to hear the sounds of babies. The OBGYN came in and said to us, "Gee, I'm really sorry for what happened, but I have to charge you an extra $350. What he said? Even the Judaism we love let us down. The Rabbi Libnick came into our room, who was a wonderful mentor and advisor and wonderful teacher. He put his arm around me with tears in his eyes and he said, "Ronnie, the canon will pick up the child and have her buried at the B'nai Emunah cemetery." I said, "What, no funeral? No. No shiva? No. Because according to traditional Jewish law, if a baby doesn't survive 30 days, it's as if the baby never lived." Now you ask me why, and I'll tell you, my theory is that there was so much infant mortality in those days when these laws were codified that they thought they were doing something to help the families. But for us, it was a great robbery. A great robbery. To this day, we have no idea where the baby is buried. And of course, the community was very comforting to us in any way they could be. We had already planned to move to Los Angeles for 2 years so I could do a master's in Jewish studies before I would come back to St. Louis and work with Rabbi Libnick. But we were devastated. And we moved to Los Angeles. We met a wonderful OBGYN who specialized in high-risk pregnancies. And slowly, Susie found a support group in a Reformed synagogue of mothers who had experienced neonatal death. And we began slowly to reclaim our lives. So you can imagine our joy when 2 years later, we fell pregnant again, and our baby, Javi, was born to our family. I was so excited. I come from 3 boys. To have a little girl in our family, let me tell you, it was an enormously joyous occasion for us. I was already working at a place called the University of Judaism, now American Jewish University, and I came down La Cienega Boulevard on the Friday afternoon when we first brought Javi home from the hospital. And I saw a sign that said the Stork Shop. And I said, "It's a baby store. I'm going to get something for our new baby." And I walked into the store and I said to the clerk, "I need a beautiful dress. And it had to be a certain color. What dress do you wear in camp in Israel for Shabbat? What color?" White, exactly. White. I said to the clerk, "I need a beautiful white dress." She took me to the back of the store, unlocked the cabinet, pulled out the most spectacular white dress I'd ever seen in my life. I said, "I'll take it, wrap it as a present." I'm now walking in Friday afternoon with this big box with a red ribbon. And Susie says to me, "Ronnie, what's that?" And I said, present for Javi, our little new baby. And Susie goes, oh, that's the sweetest thing I've ever heard a father doing, a new father doing. And then she opened the box, looked inside, starts a geschrei, a scream. Ah! She pulls out a long white knitted gown with little pearls and a little bonnet. You know what it was? A christening dress. A baptismal outfit that I, a Jewish educator, had bought for his daughter's first Shabbat at home. Susie said, Ronnie, do you know what this is? I said, it's a beautiful white dress. She said, no, it's a christening outfit. I'm not putting our baby in that dress. I said, yes, you are. I just bought this dress for $75, 1976, on sale, no returns. Put the baby in the dress. And she did, and we took a Polaroid, you remember Polaroid cameras? We took a Polaroid photo of Javi, a week old, swimming in this long white dress with a little bonnet over her head, in the infancy, on top of the Shabbat table next to the challah. This is the picture. We didn't get the punchline of this story till Javi was 11 months old. We go out to a pizza place in Los Angeles. We go to the kind of Italian places, I bet you had them here in Dallas. Darkly lit, little, little twinkly lights on trellises, red Naugahyde booth, red and white check tablecloth, you know what I mean? Italian place, pizza place. We get into the Naugahyde booth, and Javi sees our baby, 11 months old now. We had spent almost a year with her celebrating Shabbat. In the center of the table was one single red patio candle. You know the kind you use at a barbecue? With the little white net? You know what Rabbi Wolfson did? The instant she saw the candle on that table in the pizza restaurant, she went like this. She started to bless the candle in the Italian place. I turned to Susie, Susie turned to the same thing at the same time. She's a genius. And then we realized what had happened. What had happened? What had happened? She had learned a little fact of Jewish living. Candles are for blessing before her first birthday. What would most 1-year-olds do with a candle? Blow it out. They're going to blow it out. We're going to sing happy birthday. Not Javi. Javi knew candles were for blessing. And where did she learn it? She learned it at home. She learned it from her parents. Like we learned it from our parents. And our grandparents, our buddies and babies. And that's what I learned, the second most important lesson I can share with you here in Dallas. The family is the most powerful Jewish educational environment we have. As wonderful as our schools are, and you've got the great Rabbinic Academy, right? Come on. You've got great synagogues, great schools, great JCCs, great, my good friend Meyer's here, great Jewish education leadership. You've got great things. And they're fabulous and they're important, but the family is where we have the most impact. And that's why I am so blessed that Susie Wolfson is my wife and the mother of my children. My little boy, Michael, a few years later we have a little boy named Michael Lewis, after Zadie Louis, because my wife Susie is the Martha Stewart of Jewish living. Before Martha went to jail. She created the most wonderful, creative, fantastically fun Jewish experiences in our family for our kids and our friends. You can't believe it. She's collected all of them in a family scrapbook cookbook that the Historical Society should get behind. Everybody should make one of these with our family recipes. It's 400 pages. It's not just my mother's borscht recipe. It's not in her handbook. It's not just Pam's strudel recipe. It's the story behind all the recipes. Because the stories of the recipes tell our history. So Susie created 3 copies of this book. One's for us, One for our daughter Javi, who when she read it, just cried. And our son Michael got a copy for Hanukkah that year. He's kind of, at the time, was kind of a hipster, music maven, not into Jewish life very much. You know, that kind of 26-year-old. But he took one look at Susie's cookbook called Recipes for Memories and read every word on every page and said, Mom, thank you, this is my life. So the next Pesach, a few months later, Michael couldn't come for Seder. Susie sends him a care package with matzah and gefilte fish and a box of matzo ball mix. The best page in Susie's cookbook is called Dueling Matzo Balls. Dueling Matzo Balls. I copied it in the book. On one side is Bobby W., Bobby Wolfson's matzo balls. We come from Russian stock, as you know. So my mother made big, fluffy matzo balls that float in the soup. Any fluffers in the room? Can I see hands? Susie's dad from Poland made tiny golf ball-sized matzo balls, hard as a golf ball, that sank directly to the bottom of the bowl, called sinkers. Any sinkers in the room? Not too many. So Susie on one page has Bubby W., Bubby Wolfson's matzo balls, fluffy, and Zadie K's matzo balls, sinkers. Michael calls us the day after Seder and says, Mom, Dad, thank you for the care package. I had some friends over and we made a Seder. She's thrilled. Susie's thrilled. And then Michael continues, and thanks especially for the matzo ball mix, because I used your cookbook and I made matzo balls. So Susie couldn't wait to ask him, which recipe did you use and how did they come out? Michael said, well, I was going for Bubby, but they came out Zadie. Oh my gosh. That's when we became Jewish family educators. And for 20 years I worked hard to encourage our institutions to not just teach our kids, but to teach our families. And then about 20 years ago, I met a guy named Larry Hoffman from Medwin College in New York, and we created a project to transform synagogues. That's how I met Janet Beck. It was 21 years ago. At a United Synagogue convention. We've been dear friends ever since. We called it Synagogue 2000, then Synagogue 3000, and my goal was to help synagogues become more welcoming to our membership and to our strangers. Because when most people join a synagogue, what do you get? You get a bill, is what you get. Or you might get a demographic form to fill out, to send into the office, right? My favorite demographic form story comes from Susie Wolfson and Javi Wolfson. Javi returned from the University of Michigan to Los Angeles.
Go blue.
Go blue, thank you. And her girlfriend said, you got to get on J-Date. Do you have J-Date here? Yes. You know, it's the computer dating service. Javi didn't want to do it, but she finally got talked into doing it, and what she did, she's a kid in a candy store. She's going on 6 J-Dates a night to Starbucks. And she's close to Susie and me. She'd come home from the J-Dates to report on the J-Dates, bouncing off the walls from the caffeine. And one night she comes home and she says, Mom, Dad, I met him. I met him. He's perfect on paper. I said, Javi, what means perfect on paper? She was 28. He was 32, tall, handsome. His J-Date profile, he had his arm around his bubby. Goes to the synagogue. And best of all, wait for it, he's a dentist. Not only did Javi fall for this guy right away, he fell for her. Beautiful young girl at the time, and still today. Now, he took one look at our daughter Javi and said, forget coffee. We're going to dinner. In the J-date world, this is known as an instant upgrade. They go out to dinner, he pays. This is good. This is a good sign. And they start dating. And it's 3 months, 6 months, a year and a half. It's almost 2 years that they're dating. And we're saying, no, come on. And we're hoping he'll come over and ask for our blessing because we're old school. Not happening. Not happening. Mittendrinnen, you know any English? In the middle of all this, my university, American Jewish University, changes its dental plan. And I mentioned it to the dentist at Shabbat dinner one night. And he says to me, come to me, I'll take care of you. I'm all over that. I go to him, he's pretty good. I come home to Susie and I say, honey, you gotta go. And Susie says to me, no way. I don't want his hands in mine. No, Ronnie, I can't go. I can't do it. I said, listen, Susie, you might be the mother-in-law of this guy. You've got to go. And she says to me, I can't. And I said, honey, you must. And I'll never forget what Susie said as she got into the car, the first appointment with the dentist. Good thing he's not a gynecologist. Is that like the funniest thing you ever heard? Yes. It gets better. She comes home from the first appointment. I said, how did it go? She said, oh, he was fine, but you know, when you go to a doctor or dentist the first time, they give you a clipboard with a demographic form to fill out. I said, yeah. I said, what did you do? She said, I sat in the waiting room and I filled it out. The first line was name, and I wrote in Susan Wolfson. The second line of the form was, name I prefer to be called. She wrote in Mom. Now that's the funniest thing I ever heard. You never noticed it. Next thing we know, we got a call from Maui. Mom, Dad, congratulations, mazel tov, we're engaged. And it went downhill from there. He was not the guy we thought. And Avi did the most courageous thing a young woman can do. 6 weeks before the wedding, she called it off and saved her life. 2 years later, she met a guy named Dave, works at a small internet company called Google. And they've been married now 8 years, and they gave us our first grandchild. Her name is Ellie Brooklyn. We have a grandchild named Brooklyn. Ask me why? Why? Well, my dad, as you know, is from Brooklyn. My mother, Javi's mother-in-law is from Brooklyn. Brooklyn's a hot place right now. My mother had died, so they needed a B. So it's Ellie Brooklyn. I call my partner, Larry Hoffman, in New York from Los Angeles. I call him in New York. I say, Larry, give me a mazel tov. I have my first granddaughter. Her name is Ellie Brooklyn. And Larry says to me from New York, Ron, you're going to have 4 more grandchildren. Manhattan. Staten. If you have another girl, you can call her Malka for Queens. And if you have a boy, you can call him the Bronx. The Bronx. I wish my mom had lived to see him. But she didn't. And 3 days after my mom died, I don't know if you've had this experience. My brother Bobby and I, and my sister-in-law Sibby, Susie was with my dad. We're in my mom and dad's apartment. We're looking through her financial folder, a little notebook, little blue notebook. My mom ran our family. I mean, she ran everything. My father never bought a shirt. To explain the relationship of my mom and dad, a simple story, true story. My mother would say, Alan, put on a sweater. And my dad would say, Are we going out, or am I cold? That tells you everything. You know, they're all the bank accounts and the insurance numbers and everything. And on the inside cover, a little flap, we see a little white envelope with my mother's beautiful handwriting on it, important. We don't know what it is. Maybe she has a secret bank account. Maybe it's a list of who should get what. We don't know. My brother Doug wasn't there, so we waited till the shiva that night to read the letter. And with your permission, especially those of you involved in the Historical Society, this is an artifact that is historical and the most moving letter I've ever read in my life. Not just because it's addressed to me and my brothers, but wait till you hear it. My mom never believed that she would die first. My dad was a heart patient from the age of 54. So this letter is on her beautiful little stationery here from Niece Wolfson, and it's in her beautiful hand. To my dear sons, first of all, I love you, and I'm proud of all three of you. As I write this, my heart fills with pride for your roles as devoted husbands, and particularly your roles as wonderful fathers. This, of course, is the greatest gift a child can give a parent. Someday when you read this, you will also be reminded that as a parent, another great gift you've given me is the comfort of knowing you care for each other and that you will be there for each other if you need to be. My simple request is that you talk to each other often after your mother is no longer here to keep you posted. Please keep in touch with Doug. He has a very special challenge in his life and needs the support of people who love and understand him. You have filled my life with pleasure, and the most I can wish for you is that your children do the same for you. I love you, Ron, Bob, and Doug, and thank you for giving my life so much meaning. And it's signed, your mother. Is that gorgeous or what? Come on. It's an ethical will. And in a way, this book that I'm sharing with you tonight, The Best Boy in the United States of America, A Memoir of Blessings and Kisses, is my ethical will. Because in each of these stories is a lesson about how we should live our lives now, how our families, our parents, and our grandparents impact us and shape us. And that's the purpose of a historical society, to make sure we never forget where we come from and those people who have influenced us through the generations. So we have a second grandchild. He's turning 3 this weekend. 3, Gabriel Elijah. I got to be the sandak at the Brit Milah, at the bris. You know what a bris is? A circumcision? You know what a sandak is? It's the grandfather or grandparent who has the honor of sitting on Elijah's chair and holding the baby during the circumcision. I got that honor with Gabe. I was thrilled to be honored with that great privilege. The Moyle did his thing in about 2 minutes, the circumcising. But Javi, our daughter, who turns 40 years old tomorrow, I know, got the creative gene from Susie. So she made a ceremony for this Brit Milah that was 45 minutes. There were readings that all of us had. There were songs to sing. There was poetry. There was the explanation of Gabriel Elijah's names. Meanwhile, 45 minutes I'm holding this little baby. Finally, it's over, and everybody starts to sing. Simon Tov, Mazel Tov. Come on, Sing talking, mazel tov, mazel tov, sing talking, mazel tov, mazel tov. I don't know what came over me. I'm holding the baby like this in the Elijah's chair. I stood up, I held the baby high over my head, and I screamed, Hakuna Matata! Did you see the Lion King? So tomorrow morning, I hope this book is something you'll embrace and enjoy. So far, the people who have read it have fallen in love with it because the stories resonate with so many of our stories of immigrants who came to Dallas and built a family and a community and a business. So tomorrow at 7 o'clock, first flight out on American Airlines from DFW. We're flying to San Jose, because Daddy Dave works for that small internet company, to celebrate Javi's 40th birthday and Gabe's 3rd birthday. And little Ellie will be there. And when we see him, you know, you ask Ellie, where does Bubby and Sadie live? And then she says, the hotel. And I can see it right now. They're going to run up the ramp at the Marriott in Santa Clara, where the Super Bowl is next week. And I'm going to be sitting there in a chair. And Ellie is going to see us, and she'll say, hi, Bubby. And then she'll come over to me. And I'm going to open my legs wide. And she's going to jump into my lap. Zadie, Zadie. And I'm going to give her a big, scratchy, wet kiss right on the lips. And I'm going to look her straight in the eye. And I'm going to say to her, Ellie, you're the best girl in the United States of America. And Susie has added, and the world. She'll say it. And then little Gabe will run into my lap. And I'm going to give him a big, wet, scratchy kiss. And I'm going to say to him, Gabe, right in the eye, you're the best boy in the United States of America. And he'll say, and the world. And then the blessings and the kisses continue. Thank you all.